I'm Sophia, 32, and I've always been the dependable older sister to Chloe. We were super close growing up, sharing all our dreams and secrets. When she got engaged, I was so excited to be her maid of honor. I spent a lot of money, countless hours, and all my heart planning her perfect day. But family stuff can be tricky, especially with my mom, Eleanor, always in charge. I never thought she'd look me in the eye and say those awful words. If you're watching and dealing with family drama, please share your thoughts below. Hit like and subscribe because this story might just give you the strength you need. Growing up as Chloe's older sister meant I often took care of her and guided her. From teaching her to tie her shoes to helping her with school problems, I was always there for her. Our mom, Eleanor, never hid that she liked Chloe more. Chloe was the favorite, with her artistic skills and happy personality, while I was the sensible one who needed to lighten up. My dad, Thomas, usually stayed out of our family arguments, choosing pace over fighting whenever Mom went too far. As the oldest and most responsible child, I ended up solving all the family's problems. When the roof leaked, I fixed it. When bills piled up, I quietly paid them from my savings. This continued into our adult years, with me helping Chloe financially through her art history degree when our parents didn't contribute enough. My own career led me to become a financial advisor in New York City. It was funny how I managed big money for clients, but was still expected to manage my family's money too. I didn't mind though. Helping Chloe reach her dreams made me truly happy. When Chloe met Daniel at an art show 3 years ago, I knew right away they were perfect for each other. Daniel came from a rich family, but wasn't showy about it. He liked Chloe's artistic view and supported her career goals. Their engagement after 2 years of dating didn't surprise anyone, and I was the first person Chloe called, screaming with excitement. "Sophia, he proposed! You're going to be my maid of honor, right? I can't do this without you." Her voice was full of happiness that December morning. "Of course I will," I promised, already thinking about how I could help make her wedding dreams come true. The first steps of planning were just as I'd imagined. Chloe and I spent weekends looking at places, talking about colors, and making inspiration boards. I wrote down every detail, wanting to make sure her vision came true. My apartment slowly filled with wedding magazines and fabric samples. The first sign of trouble came during what should have been a simple family dinner to talk about wedding costs. Mom arrived with a fancy wedding planner I'd never seen. "I've already paid deposits for the Grand Plaza Hotel," she announced, before anyone had even served salad. They only had one date available this summer, so I grabbed it. Chloe looked surprised but pleased. "Mom, that's so kind, but Sophia and I were still looking at places." "Darling, the Grand Plaza books up a year ahead. We're lucky they had a cancellation." Mom patted Chloe's hand while giving me a winning look. "Besides, I always imagined your wedding there." That was the first of many decisions made without asking me. Within weeks, Mom had pretty much taken over, becoming a wedding dictator instead of just helping sometimes. Vendors I'd found were ignored for her friends' suggestions. The color scheme Chloe and I had picked was suddenly too dull. "It's fine," Chloe told me when I worried. "Mom's really enjoying this, and it makes planning easier. Plus, she and Dad are paying a lot." I kept quiet and stepped back, still helping where I could, but feeling more and more like an outsider. That feeling grew stronger when my cousin Lily started showing up in planning photos on social media. Lily always wanted to be part of our family's inner circle. Now she was suddenly going with Chloe and Mom to vendor meetings I hadn't been invited to. In one Instagram photo, she was holding color samples against bridesmaid dress options, a job I thought would be mine as maid of honor. "Chloe seems closer to Lily these days," I mentioned casually to my boyfriend Michael one evening as I scrolled through another photo of them at a cake tasting. "Maybe it's just because Lily has more free time," Michael suggested, always the calm one. "You've been swamped at work this quarter." I nodded, trying to ignore the nagging worry that something bigger was happening. After all, Chloe and I had always been there for each other for 30 years. A few weeks of wedding planning couldn't change that, could it? But as spring went on, the invitations to planning events stopped coming at all. When I called Chloe to check in, her answers became more vague and rushed. The detailed talks about centerpieces and music were replaced with quick texts. Mom's handling it, or already figured it out. Meanwhile, I was still paying for parts of the wedding, like the deposit for the photographer Chloe loved, but Mom thought was too expensive. I ordered custom welcome baskets for out-of-town guests and secretly arranged what I hoped would be the perfect wedding gift, a luxury honeymoon to Hawaii with first-class flights and a private villa with ocean views. I told myself everything would go back to normal after the wedding. This was just a stressful time, and soon my sister and I would laugh about Mom's wedding takeover over wine in her new apartment. I didn't realize then how wrong I was, or how quickly things would get worse than I ever thought possible. The day I found out I wasn't invited to Chloe's wedding dress shopping was like a punch to the chest. I found out from an innocent question from my coworker Sarah, who happened to be friends with the boutique owner. "How was Chloe's appointment yesterday? The owner mentioned your sister found the one right away." I froze, coffee cup halfway to my lips. What appointment? Sarah's face changed from excited to uncomfortable. "Oh, at Elegant Moments. She said your mom, sister, and cousin had champagne and spent hours there. I just thought you were there too." I mumbled something about a last-minute work emergency and escaped to the bathroom, where I stared at my reflection, trying to understand why I was left out of such an important moment. Chloe and I had talked about wedding dress shopping since we were teenagers, pretending pillowcases were veils and promising to be there for each other's special moments. I called Chloe that evening, my voice carefully controlled. "How was dress shopping?" "Oh, it just happened really fast. Mom had an appointment, and it wasn't supposed to be the actual shopping day, just a first look with Lily. She was free, and we needed a third opinion." "I could have made myself free," I said quietly. "Sophia, don't make this a big deal. There will be plenty of other wedding stuff you can be part of." But the other wedding stuff never happened. The bridal shower was planned without my input, though I was asked to pay for the venue. The bachelorette party planning was taken over by Lily, who chose a place I knew Chloe wouldn't truly enjoy. When I offered ideas based on 30 years of knowing my sister, they were dismissed as not what Chloe wants anymore. Still, I kept helping from the sidelines. I finalized the honeymoon arrangements, spending $8,600 on first-class flights, fancy places to stay, and special experiences I knew they'd love. I imagined Chloe's face when I surprised her with it at the rehearsal dinner, picturing the hug and the return of our sisterly bond. Meanwhile, the distance between us grew. Chloe started saying no to our usual Sunday brunches, always with a different excuse. When we did talk, our conversations felt fake and shallow, nothing like the deep talks we'd always shared. "Is everything okay between us?" I finally asked directly after 3 weeks of less and less communication. "Everything's fine. I'm just super busy with wedding stuff," she replied, not quite looking at me. Mom's been amazing handling all the details. At a family gathering in May, just 2 months before the wedding, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I had stepped into the kitchen to refill my water glass when I heard my name from the next dining room. "Sophia's always been difficult," my mother's voice carried clearly. "Chloe's finally seeing it now. Always has to control everything, make everything about her achievements." "It must be hard for Chloe," Lily responded, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "especially during her wedding when she should be the center of attention." "Exactly. That's why we've had to limit her involvement, for Chloe's sake." I stood frozen, water overflowing my glass as their words sank in. My own mother was actively trying to keep me out of my sister's wedding, making me out to be some kind of attention-seeking monster to anyone who would listen. That night, I broke down to Michael, finally saying the fears I'd been holding back for months. What if they don't even want me at the wedding anymore? What if all this distance is leading to something worse? Michael pulled me close, his calm presence a contrast to my shaking hands. "That's not possible. You're Chloe's sister, and you've done nothing but support her." "But what if Mom has convinced her otherwise? You don't know how convincing she can be, how she twists things." "Then you need to talk to Chloe directly," Michael said firmly. "No more guessing, no more hoping it will get better on its own. You need to have a real conversation about what's happening." He was right. The situation had gotten too bad for me to just accept it. I texted Chloe the next morning. "Need to talk about the wedding and our relationship. Can we meet tomorrow?" Her response came hours later. "Really busy with wedding stuff. Come to Mom and Dad's on Thursday at 7. We can talk then." Those 5 days were some of the longest of my life. I practiced what I would say, how I would calmly express my hurt without accusing anyone. I reminded myself that Chloe might be stuck in the middle, pressured by our mother's strong personality. I arrived at our parents' house Thursday evening with hope for making up and getting clarity. I had no idea I was walking into a trap that would shatter my relationship with my family and force me to rethink what loyalty and self-respect truly meant. The evening air felt strangely still as I parked outside my parents' traditional home that Thursday. The familiar driveway where Chloe and I had played hopscotch as kids now felt like a strange place. I checked my reflection in the mirror, straightened my shirt, and took a deep breath before heading to the front door. Mom answered before I could even ring the bell, her face unreadable. "We're in the living room," she said coldly, turning without waiting for my answer. The scene inside felt planned. Dad sat in his usual armchair, looking uncomfortable and a bit pale. Chloe sat on the edge of the sofa, eyes down, twisting her fingers in her lap. Mom stood behind Chloe, one hand on the sofa back, looking like she was protecting her. And there, in what had always been my spot during family talks, sat Lily, looking both smug and worried. "What's going on?" I asked, staying standing when no one offered me a seat. "Chloe, I thought we were going to talk about the wedding." "That's why we're all here," Mom cut in before Chloe could speak. "There's something you need to understand about the wedding." A strange stillness came over me, a calm before a storm I could feel coming. "We've been discussing things," Mom continued, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she'd perfected over decades. "And we all agreed that your involvement in the wedding has become problematic." "Problematic?" I repeated, looking directly at Chloe, who still wouldn't meet my gaze. "Your controlling behavior, your need to make everything about yourself," Mom said, ticking off points on her fingers like a shopping list. "The way you've tried to overshadow Chloe's special time with your opinions and your financial contributions." I felt as though I'd stepped into another world. "Chloe," I prompted, desperate for my sister to speak for herself. She finally looked up, her face a mix of guilt and practiced determination. "It's just been really stressful, Sophia. Every time you get involved, there's tension. Mom thinks," I repeated softly. "What do you think, Chloe?" Before she could answer, Mom stepped forward, putting herself partly between us. "What Chloe thinks is that her wedding should be a happy occasion, and frankly, your presence would make that impossible." The room seemed to tilt slightly as her words sank in. "My presence at the planning, you mean?" Mom's lips curved into what can only be described as a smirk, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes at finally delivering the blow she'd been planning for months. "We all agreed. You're not welcome at the wedding," she said, saying each word like she was enjoying a fine wine. "Not as maid of honor, not as a bridesmaid, not as a guest. It's better for everyone this way." The silence that followed was total. I could hear the old clock on the fireplace ticking, marking seconds in a moment that felt endless. Dad shifted in his chair, but said nothing. Lily had the decency to look at the floor. And Chloe, my sister, my best friend since her first breath, sat silently, effectively ending 30 years of sisterhood. "I see," I said finally, surprised by how steady my own voice was. "And when was this decision made?" "We've been moving this way for months," Mom replied, clearly pleased by my calm reaction, mistaking shock for acceptance. "Chloe asked Lily to be her maid of honor weeks ago. We just needed to make it official." I turned to Lily, who now met my gaze with a challenging look. "Congratulations," I said flatly. "It's nothing personal," she replied, the lie obvious. I almost laughed at how ridiculous it was. Nothing personal about replacing me in my sister's wedding, in my sister's life. "Chloe," I tried one more time, "is this really what you want?" Mom answered again. "Chloe wants a drama-free wedding. You've always been too controlling, too opinionated. Everything has to be your way. The venue wasn't good enough. The caterer wasn't up to your standards. That's not true, and you know it, I interrupted, feeling the first crack in my calm appearance. I've supported every decision, even when I wasn't asked. I've contributed thousands of dollars without being asked. See? There it is, Mom pointed accusingly, throwing your money in our faces, using your financial contributions to control the wedding. That's exactly why you can't be there. I looked at my father, silently begging him to say something, anything. He met my eyes briefly, then looked away, his lifelong habit of avoiding conflict winning out. Even now, a strange calm settled over me. Then a clear understanding cut through the hurt and confusion. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something that could be fixed with a heart-to-heart. This was a carefully planned exclusion, months in the making. Good to know, I said simply. I turned and walked toward the door, my movements mechanical. Behind me, I heard Chloe call my name, once, softly, but no footsteps followed. No one tried to stop me. The drive home passed in a blur. Streetlights smeared like watercolors as unexpected tears filled my eyes. I pulled over twice when the road became too blurry to drive safely. My phone buzzed repeatedly with incoming texts, but I couldn't bring myself to look at them. When I finally reached my apartment, Michael was waiting, his face full of hopeful expectation that crumbled the moment he saw me. "What happened?" he asked, immediately pulling me into a hug. The whole story poured out in broken pieces between sobs. The trap, Mom's cruel smirk, Chloe's betrayal, Dad's silence, Lily's triumph. "They can't do this," Michael said when I finished, outrage clear in his voice. "You're her sister. You've done nothing but support her." "Apparently, that doesn't matter," I whispered, emotional exhaustion beginning to set in. "Mom's been working on this for months, turning Chloe against me, making me out to be some kind of villain." "What are you going to do?" Michael asked, his hand warm against mine. I stared out the window at the city lights below, feeling empty yet somehow lighter, as if the worst had happened and now I could begin to rebuild. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I know I deserve better than this. All of this." What I didn't realize then was that the argument that evening wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of what would come next, both the deep betrayal and the unexpected path to healing that would follow in the coming days. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay awake replaying the scene at my parents' house, analyzing every word, every look, searching for something I might have misunderstood. But the memory of my mother's satisfied smirk as she gave her verdict left no room for doubt. By 4 a.m., I'd given up on sleep entirely. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold beside me, I began to list everything I had contributed to Chloe's wedding. The photographer deposit, $2,500, custom welcome baskets for out-of-town guests, $800, the string quartet I'd arranged as a surprise for the ceremony, $1,200. The list grew longer as I remembered smaller expenses. The vintage hairpin I'd found that matched Chloe's grandmother's earrings, the calligrapher I'd hired for the place cards after Chloe mentioned loving hand lettering. And then the honeymoon, the best of my gifts to my sister and Daniel. First-class flights to Hawaii, $4,200, the private villa with ocean views, $3,800. The special experiences I'd arranged, private cooking class, sunset cruise, guided trek to hidden waterfalls, $600 all told. I'd contributed over $15,000 to a wedding I was now banned from attending. The first light of dawn was breaking when I made my decision. I opened my laptop and went to my banking app. With steady fingers, I transferred the $8,600 honeymoon fund back to my personal account. Next, I logged into the airline and resort websites, carefully canceling each reservation. I sent a short, professional email to the travel agent handling the special experiences, explaining that the plans had changed. My phone had been buzzing on and off throughout the night with texts and calls, but I hadn't looked at it. Now, I checked the notifications. 3 missed calls from Chloe, 12 from Mom, even one from Dad, which was unusual. There were many texts, most from Mom, ranging from defensive, "You're making this all about you again," to accusing, "After everything we've done for you," nothing that showed regret or a change of heart. I made one last call to my credit card company. I need to report some unauthorized charges, I explained to the representative. Family members have been making purchases without my permission. It wasn't entirely accurate, but it wasn't entirely false either. I'd never clearly allowed my mother to use my card information for the extra wedding favors she'd ordered last month or the upgraded linens she'd insisted upon. By 7 a.m., I'd systematically cut my financial ties to Chloe's wedding. I sent a brief email to my boss explaining I needed a personal day, then turned off my phone completely. The sudden silence felt both scary and freeing. I spent the morning walking through the public gardens, trying to understand the huge impact of what had happened. The betrayal felt physical, an actual ache beneath my ribs that got worse with each breath. Chloe and I had shared everything for 30 years, secrets, dreams, sorrows, celebrations. How could she sit silently while Mom kicked me out of her wedding? How could she replace me with Lily of all people? I've been so blind, I said finally. You've been a daughter who wanted to believe the best about her mother, Olivia corrected gently. That's not blindness, that's love. The pieces began to fit together in a new way, explaining decades of small cruelties and manipulations I'd seen as normal or excused. The times Mom had forgotten to tell me about family events, the backhanded compliments about my career. It's amazing, you've done so well without a husband to support you. The way she subtly reminded Chloe of every childhood wrong while ignoring all I'd done to support and protect my sister. I've been so blind, I said finally. You've been a daughter who wanted to believe the best about her mother, Olivia corrected gently. That's not blindness, that's love. By the time I returned home that afternoon, I felt different, still hurt, but clearer about what was happening and what I needed to do. I turned my phone back on and watched as notifications flooded in. 28 missed calls in total, voicemails ranging from my mother's cold anger to my father's uncomfortable attempts at peacemaking, and one message from Chloe sent at 3:42 a.m. that changed everything. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Mom's been lying to me about you for months. Daniel and I just found out what she did with the honeymoon reservations. Please call me, please. I need my sister back. I stared at Chloe's message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the call button without pressing it. The raw emotion in her text felt real, but after months of manipulation and yesterday's brutal argument, I wasn't ready to jump back into the chaos without understanding more. The other messages showed a family falling apart. Mom's voicemails went from righteously angry, "How dare you cancel the honeymoon after promising it as a gift?" to threatening, "You've left me no choice but to tell everyone about your behavior," to an unconvincing attempt at making up, "We can still fix this if you apologize." Dad's messages were fewer and more quiet. "Your mother is very upset," he said in one, background noise suggesting he was calling from his car to avoid being overheard. "I didn't know about any of this until yesterday. Please call when you can." Other family members had started to weigh in too. My uncle, Robert, always Mom's ally, left a stern lecture about respecting parents. My grandmother asked in her shaky voice if I was feeling all right, clearly having heard Mom's version of events. But there were unexpected supporters too. Aunt Catherine, who rarely got involved in family drama, left a surprisingly strong message. "I've watched your mother do this before, Sophia. She did the same to me with your father. Call me. We need to talk." I decided to start there, calling my father's sister back first. "Oh, Sophia," Aunt Catherine's warm voice filled the line immediately. "I've been so worried. Are you all right?" "Not really," I admitted. "I don't understand what's happening, Aunt Cath. Why would Mom do this?" "Because you threaten her," she said simply. "You always have, since you were little. So capable, so independent. Eleanor needs to be needed, to control everything. When that's challenged, she reacts." "By turning my sister against me? By banning me from the wedding?" "It's what she does," Catherine sighed. "She did the same to me when I was your age. Your father and I were always close, but when he met Eleanor, things changed. She created conflicts that didn't exist, told your father I'd said terrible things about her. By their wedding, I wasn't welcome either." I sat down heavily, processing this new information. Dad never told me that? Thomas has always chosen peace over fighting, especially with your mother. We eventually made up, but only years later, and never like before. Her voice softened. But this isn't about old history. This is about stopping the pattern now, before your relationship with Chloe is permanently damaged. After speaking with Catherine, I called my best friend from college, Andrea, who worked as a therapist. Without breaking confidentiality, she helped me understand the family patterns at play: controlling behaviors, involving a third person in a conflict, the favorite child scapegoat dynamic that had shaped my relationship with Chloe since childhood. The most important thing, Andrea emphasized, is protecting your own boundaries while leaving room for Chloe to find her way back. She's been manipulated too. I was still processing this advice when my phone rang again. It was Daniel, Chloe's fiancé. Sophia, he sounded genuinely distressed. Thank God you answered. It's been chaos here. Chloe's been crying for hours. What happened, Daniel? I kept my voice neutral, not ready to trust yet. We sound out what your mother's been doing, the lies she's been telling, the emails she changed. Sophia, Chloe never knew you were excluded from dress shopping. Your mom told her you couldn't make it, showed her texts from you canceling. What? I never sent any texts. We know that now. Your mother apparently created fake conversations to show Chloe, making it look like you were too busy or didn't care about wedding activities. His voice hardened. When we confronted her, she admitted to changing the names in the contact list on Chloe's phone too, sending some of your texts to her own phone. The level of deliberate manipulation was shocking. But yesterday at the house, Chloe thought that meeting was to clear things up. Your mother told her you'd been saying horrible things about the wedding, that you needed to hear how hurt everyone was. She never expected what actually happened. My head was spinning. Why is she telling me this through you? Because she's terrified you'll never speak to her again. And because, he hesitated, your mother showed up at our apartment last night after you left. She was not well, screaming about ungrateful children, demanding we choose sides. It got bad enough that neighbors called building security. The situation was spinning faster than I could understand. I need to think, Daniel. This is all too much. I understand. Just don't shut the door completely, okay? Chloe loves you. She's been manipulated too. I promised nothing, but said I'd be in touch soon. I barely had time to take in this conversation before my work phone rang. It was Maria, our office receptionist. Sophia, I hate to bother you on your day off, but there's a situation here. Your mother arrived about 20 minutes ago demanding to see you. When I explained you weren't in, she's causing quite a scene in the lobby. My professional and personal worlds were crashing in the worst way. What is she doing exactly? Making accusations, telling anyone that you've stolen money from her, that you're experiencing some kind of breakdown. Maria lowered her voice. Mr. Johnson is trying to handle it, but she's becoming increasingly erratic. I'll be right there, I said, grabbing my keys. The 15-minute drive to my office felt like entering a battle zone. Mom had never visited my workplace before, had shown minimal interest in my career beyond how it helped the family financially. Now she was there, deliberately trying to ruin the professional reputation I'd spent years building. I arrived to find security escorting my mother from the building, her voice carrying across the lobby. You don't know what she's capable of. She's always been troubled. The embarrassment was sharp, burning across my face as colleagues watched the scene unfold. Mr. Johnson, my direct supervisor, approached with concern. Sophia, take whatever time you need to handle this personal matter, he said quietly. Your work speaks for itself. No one here is paying attention to unfounded accusations. His support should have been comforting, but the public display left me feeling exposed and violated. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. Mom was actively trying to destroy the foundations of my life, my reputation, my relationships, my career. As security guided my mother to the parking lot, her eyes locked with mine across the lobby. Instead of the regret or shame one might expect, I saw only cold fury and something worse, satisfaction at having disrupted my carefully ordered world. In that moment, something changed within me. The hurt child seeking her mother's approval disappeared, replaced by a clear-eyed adult who could finally see the pattern of manipulation for what it was. This wasn't love. This wasn't family. This was abuse, and it had gone on long enough. I returned to my apartment and made a decision. It was time to deal with this situation once and for all, not with emotional reactions, but with calm, undeniable truth. I would meet with Chloe and anyone else involved to explain exactly what had happened and set boundaries that would protect my well-being going forward. Whether those boundaries included attending the wedding or even staying in contact with my mother remained to be seen, but for the first time, I understood that I deserved better treatment than I'd received, and I was prepared to demand it. 2 days later, I sat at a corner table in a neutral place, a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and Chloe's. I'd arrived early to calm my nerves, arranging printed evidence in a folder beside me. Screenshots of original texts that showed Mom's fake ones, email confirmations of wedding arrangements I'd made, bank statements showing my financial contributions. Chloe arrived alone, looking smaller somehow, her usual confidence lessened. Dark circles beneath her eyes matched my own. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, sliding into the chair opposite me. "Daniel isn't joining us?" I asked, having expected him after our phone conversation. "He's parking the car. I wanted a few minutes with just you first." Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged her purse beside her. "Sophia, I don't even know where to begin." I waited, giving her space to find her words. This wasn't how I'd pictured our first conversation after the argument, but nothing about this situation had followed expected patterns. "I believed her," Chloe finally said, her voice breaking. "All these months, Mom has been showing me texts from you, canceling plans, telling me you thought my wedding choices were tacky, that you were too busy with your important career to be bothered with wedding details." Tears spilled onto her cheeks. I believed her because it was easier than thinking my mother would lie so completely, so deliberately. "She showed you fake texts?" I asked, still struggling to understand how deep the deception went. Chloe nodded, pulling out her phone. "Daniel figured it out. Look at this." She showed me her messaging app, scrolling to conversations with me. Except they weren't my words at all. Messages dismissing wedding plans, complaining about costs, making mean remarks about her choices. All attributed to my number, but written in a voice nothing like mine. Mom had access to my phone. She created a contact with her number, but your name. When I thought I was texting you, I was actually texting her. Then she'd respond pretending to be you. Chloe wiped her eyes. "And she deleted real messages from you. I never received half the things you sent me." The careful way she deceived us was shocking. But what about when we saw each other in person? Surely you could tell something was off. "We barely saw each other these past few months. Mom always had an excuse for why you couldn't make it to wedding events. And when we did meet, she was always there, controlling the conversation, making everything you said sound bad afterward." Chloe looked up as Daniel approached the table. She poisoned everything. Daniel sat down, 3 coffees before taking a seat beside Chloe. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I should have seen what was happening sooner." "How did you figure it out?" I asked. "The honeymoon cancellation was the turning point," Daniel explained. "When Chloe got the notification, she was confused because she didn't even know about the Hawaii trip. Your mother claimed you had promised this elaborate honeymoon, but canceled it meanly after being rightly excluded from the wedding." "But that made no sense," Chloe interrupted. "Why would you spend thousands on a honeymoon for us if you were as resentful as Mom claimed?" So we started investigating, checking her phone records, comparing timestamps of messages. Once we started looking for inconsistencies, the whole fake story fell apart. The final proof came when we found a folder on your mother's tablet. She'd actually been keeping screenshots of fake conversations she created, probably to keep her story straight. I pushed my folder across the table. I brought my own evidence, bank transfers, original emails, everything. As Chloe and Daniel reviewed the documents, their expressions changed from shock to horror to anger. The difference between my actual words and actions versus what my mother had shown couldn't have been clearer. "That day at your parents' house," Daniel said, Chloe thought we were meeting to clear the air about misunderstandings. She had no idea your mother was planning to ban you from the wedding." I froze, Chloe admitted, shame clear in her voice. When Mom started saying those terrible things, claiming we'd all agreed, I was in shock. By the time I understood what was happening, you were already gone. Her hand reached for mine across the table. "Sophia, I never agreed to exclude you from my wedding. Never. You're my sister, my best friend. I can't get married without you there." The confirmation of my experience brought a rush of emotion I hadn't expected. For months, I'd been made to question my own perceptions, my own worth in my family. "We need to talk about Mom," I said once I could trust my voice again. "This isn't normal behavior. This is deliberate, calculated manipulation." "It gets worse," Daniel said grimly. "After you left that night, Chloe confronted your mother. The things she said, the venom, it was like watching someone turn into a different person." Chloe nodded. "She admitted to everything, but with no regret. She said she was protecting me from your negative influence. When I said I wanted you back in the wedding, she threatened to withdraw all financial support and tell everyone in the family I was having a pre-wedding breakdown." "Just like what she's been saying about me," I murmured. "Exactly," Daniel confirmed. "It's a pattern she uses to make anyone who challenges her look bad." We spent the next hour mapping out the full extent of my mother's manipulation, the changed texts, the diverted invitations, the rumors spread throughout our social circle, the financial control. Each new piece of information built upon the last, creating a complete picture of calculated emotional abuse spanning decades. "I've arranged a meeting," I finally said, "with Dad, Aunt Catherine, and a few other family members who need to hear the truth. A neutral family intervention of sorts." "When?" Chloe asked. "Tomorrow evening. Will you come?" She nodded without hesitation. Of course, it's time everyone knew the truth. The family meeting the following evening was both difficult and necessary. We gathered in Aunt Catherine's living room, myself, Chloe, and Daniel, Dad, Aunt Catherine, and Uncle Paul, and our maternal grandmother, Martha, who had specifically asked to be included after receiving worrying calls from Mom. I presented the evidence methodically, without emotion. The fake texts, the financial records, the witness accounts of Mom's public behaviors. Catherine shared similar experiences from decades earlier. Daniel described Mom's meltdown at their apartment. Dad sat silent throughout most of the presentation, his face growing increasingly pale as the evidence piled up. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "I knew some of it," he admitted. "Not the extent, but enough that I should have done something long ago." He looked at me with eyes full of regret. "I chose peace over protecting you. I'm so sorry, Sophia." Mom arrived last, having been told this was a wedding budget discussion. Her confident entrance faltered when she saw the assembled group and the evidence spread across the coffee table. "What is this?" she demanded, eyes darting between faces. "A chance for truth," I said simply. What followed was both expected and painful. Initial denial, accusations of a conspiracy against her, attempts to win allies through familiar manipulation tactics. When those failed, rage, cold and cutting, then hot and uncontrolled. And finally, when trapped by undeniable evidence, tears and claims of misunderstanding, of only wanting what was best for the family. "I will not be treated this way," she declared when everyone remained unmoved by her performance. "After everything I've done for this family, for Chloe's wedding." "About the wedding," Chloe interrupted, standing to face our mother directly. "Sophia will be my maid of honor, as I always wanted. If you can't accept that and behave respectfully toward her, then you will have a very limited role in both the wedding and our lives going forward." Mom's face twisted with shock. "You would choose her over your own mother?" "I'm choosing truth over manipulation," Chloe replied steadily. "I'm choosing health over toxicity." "Your father will never allow this." Mom turned to Dad, expectation clear in her face. For perhaps the first time in their marriage, Dad didn't give in to keep the peace. "Eleanor, enough. Look at what you've done. Look at the evidence. This stops now." The intervention didn't end with a neat solution. Mom left in a fury, promising consequences for our betrayal. But something fundamental had changed. The pattern of manipulation had been exposed, named, and rejected by those it was designed to control. As difficult family members and wedding dynamics go, we were far from the finish line. But for the first time, I felt we were all walking in the same direction, toward truth and healthier relationships, regardless of what that might mean for the wedding, now just weeks away. The week before Chloe's wedding arrived with a cautious new normal settling within our broken family. After the intervention, Mom had tried various tactics: icy silence, tearful pleas for understanding, angry accusations, and finally a grudging outward acceptance of the new boundaries we'd set. Dad had surprised us all by standing firm in his support of Chloe's decision to bring me back as maid of honor. After decades of choosing peace over fighting, he seemed to have found a hidden strength none of us knew he had. "I should have protected you both long ago," he told me during a private conversation on my apartment balcony, city lights twinkling below us. I convinced myself that saying nothing was the same as keeping the peace. I was wrong. "Why now, Dad?" I asked gently. He stared into his coffee cup for a long moment. Seeing it all laid out like that, the deliberate nature of it, I couldn't hide from it anymore. And honestly, Sophia, I'm tired. Tired of walking on eggshells, tired of pretending everything is fine when it isn't. His vulnerability was both shocking and healing. This new version of my father, willing to admit hard truths, to apologize, to change, gave me hope that real transformation might be possible. Chloe and I had been rebuilding our relationship day by day, our bond bruised but not broken. We'd spent long hours talking through the manipulations that had driven us apart, grieving the months of sisterhood we'd lost. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if Daniel hadn't discovered those fake texts," she said during one of our reconciliation brunches, now back in their rightful place in our weekly routines. "Let's not think about that," I suggested, squeezing her hand across the table. "We're here now." As for Mom, the family had given her clear conditions. She could participate in the wedding, but her role would be very limited. No more making decisions alone, no private talks with vendors, no attempts to isolate or manipulate any family members. And if I refuse these conditions, she'd asked, the word dripping with disdain, "then you'll attend as a guest only, with no input on any part of the ceremony or reception," Chloe had stated firmly. To everyone's surprise, Mom had eventually agreed, though her compliance seemed more strategic than genuine. The flashes of resentment in her eyes, quickly hidden by fake pleasantness, told the true story. My own journey through this ordeal had changed me in unexpected ways. The initial devastation had given way to clarity about family patterns I'd seen as normal for too long. Working with a therapist specializing in family trauma, I'd begun to see how my own enabling and people-pleasing behaviors had made me open to manipulation. "Your worth isn't measured by what you provide to others," Dr. Evans reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "Not financially, not emotionally, not practically." These words became a guiding thought as wedding preparations entered their final phase. I took back my role as maid of honor with a new understanding of boundaries. Yes, I would help coordinate the bridesmaids and assist Chloe with last-minute details. No, I would not empty my savings or sacrifice my well-being to manage everyone else's emotions. I'd also rebooked a changed version of the honeymoon package for Chloe and Daniel, still generous, but adjusted to reflect my new understanding of healthy giving. "This is a gift freely given with no strings attached," I told them when presenting the revised itinerary, "not a payment for inclusion or affection." The wedding day itself arrived sunny and clear, a beautiful contrast to the emotional storms of previous months. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 p.m. at the Grand Plaza Hotel, leaving the morning and early afternoon for preparations. Mom stuck to her promised behavior, though the effort clearly strained her. Her interactions with me were minimal but outwardly polite. Her attention focused on playing the role of mother of the bride perfectly for the arriving guests. As I helped Chloe into her wedding dress, the one I hadn't been there to see her choose, I felt a momentary pang of loss for the simple joy this day should have held. Chloe caught my expression in the mirror. "I wish we could erase the last few months," she said softly. "I don't," I surprised myself by responding. As painful as it was, it brought truth into the open. We can build something healthier now. She turned to face me, radiant in ivory lace. When did my big sister get so wise? Probably around the time my little sister got so brave, I replied, carefully adjusting her veil. The ceremony went beautifully. I stood proudly beside Chloe, holding her bouquet as she and Daniel exchanged vows full of real emotion. Mom sat in the front row beside Dad, her composure perfect, her eyes occasionally meeting mine with unreadable emotion. It was during the reception that the most unexpected moment of healing occurred. As guests mingled during cocktail hour, I found myself alone for a moment near the gift table, adjusting some misplaced cards. "The calligraphy is beautiful," Mom's voice came from behind me. "That was your doing, wasn't it?" I turned, ready for criticism disguised as a compliment, but her expression held something I rarely saw directed at me: genuine appreciation. "Yes," I answered simply. "Chloe mentioned loving hand lettering, so—" Mom nodded, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. Finally, she spoke again, her voice lower, less certain. "You've always noticed those details about people, what they love, what matters to them. I never had that gift." The admission, so small yet so important coming from her, left me momentarily speechless. "The therapist Catherine recommended," Mom continued, looking anywhere but at me, "says I need to practice acknowledging others' strengths without feeling lessened by them." A brief, humorless laugh. Apparently, I have work to do in that area. "You're seeing a therapist?" I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. "Your father insisted, after everything." She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "I don't expect this to fix things between us. I know that will take time, if it's even possible, but I am trying." It wasn't an apology, it wasn't a complete change, but it was a tiny crack in the wall of denial she'd built around herself, and for today, that was enough. 1 month after the wedding, our family began tentative group therapy sessions. Mom attended reluctantly at first, then with increasing willingness, as the framework gave her acceptable ways to express her needs without manipulation. Dad found his voice gradually, speaking truths long suppressed. Chloe and I strengthened our sisterhood, now built on mutual respect rather than unhealthy dependence. My own healing journey continued independently as well. I established clearer boundaries in all relationships, not just with family. I learned to recognize when my helping turned into unhealthy behavior. And most importantly, I began to value myself apart from what I could provide or do for others. Michael had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal. His steady support never wavered. 6 months after Chloe's wedding, during a weekend hike to our favorite mountain overlook, he proposed. "Yes," I said without hesitation, but with one condition. He raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Our wedding planning stays between us. Small committee, clear boundaries, no drama." His laughter echoed across the valley below us. Deal. Life continued to evolve in the years that followed. Mom's progress came in fits and starts, some days showing real growth, others falling back into old patterns. Dad discovered a newfound confidence that revitalized not just his marriage, but his long-delayed personal interests. Chloe and Daniel welcomed their first child, making me an aunt to a little girl whose middle name, Sophia, brought tears to my eyes. And I learned perhaps the most valuable lesson of all, that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, that boundaries aren't walls to love, but foundations for its healthiest expression, and that standing firm in your own worth is not selfish, but essential. The journey from that devastating night when my mother said those cruel words, "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding," to where I stand now wasn't direct or easy. It required courage to face painful truths, wisdom to tell healthy relationships from toxic ones, and strength to demand the respect I deserved. If you're facing similar family challenges or painful exclusions, remember that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones that ultimately lead to healing. Your worth isn't decided by others' ability to recognize it. And sometimes, when the door to reconciliation seems firmly closed, it's actually the first step toward opening a healthier one. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Have you ever had to stand up to family manipulation or set difficult boundaries with loved ones? How did you find the courage to value yourself when others couldn't see your worth? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this story resonated with you. Your support means everything as we navigate these complicated human experiences together. Thank you for listening, and remember, your story matters too.